Hello, Ectosage here on the Sage channel, and a new update came out today that added some new functions for wheels. And in fact, it didn't really add new functions for wheels, it added a new wheel setup. So the original wheels are still in the game, but they added something else. I'll show you that in a minute. But first, we'll go to New World, Custom World, the Advanced button right here. And you can see they've added something else. They've added welding and grinding speed. So now you can actually set those down to 0.5 if you like, so it'll be even slower than realism. Or you can make it 2 and 5 times faster, and they're both independent of one another, which is very, very cool. So if you think grinding speed's fine, but welding needs to be a bit quicker, you can switch that, which is pretty dang awesome. And that actually, sort of unrelated to that, but sort of related to the fact that they're allowing us to edit this now. When you're trying to hack an enemy system by grinding something down and welding it back up, when you're grinding down something that belongs to someone else, it now takes a little bit longer, which is pretty cool. You might notice this screen's getting a bit busy now with all this stuff. I suspect soon there'll be a scroll bar actually on the screen to scroll up and down. Another thing they did today, and of course you can edit that stuff just by editing a world settings. If you were to go to edit settings, the same thing shows up here. But another thing they did today is if you do join world, now if you look at the bottom here, they got a search thing, so you can search for all sorts of different stuff. Which apparently there's nothing showing up right now. Oh, wait, nope, there we go. So there we go, you can search for all sorts of different stuff, and you can see as I was typing, it's sort of searching every time I enter a letter, which is a bit strange, but anyway. That's pretty cool, pretty awesome, and there's a bunch of stuff there. Now let's actually get into the world, shall we, and see what people want to see, the new wheels. Alrighty, so here we are in the actual test world for these new wheels, and you can see the new wheel setup. If I actually turn on my UI, you can see if we scroll down a bit, right here, there are wheel suspension, as opposed to just the normal wheels. So if we were to take, let's say, a normal wheel 5x5, compared to the other suspension 5x5, you can see when we go to place it, this is a suspension. It comes with its own special suspension thing, and if you right click to delete any of that, it deletes the whole thing. Whereas the normal wheel is still just a wheel to allow you to use it on just normal rotors and stuff, because of course normal rotors do indeed still exist. But the wheels themselves have some extra functionality as opposed to just those rotors. So first thing, let's just go ahead and look at them, shall we? We got our small ship, small wheel, so it's a 1x1 wheel, a bit strange. It's funny to actually see the assembly take up far more space than the wheel itself. And by the way, you can indeed build on top of these, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. And then we got our medium, the same exact base, I believe, but then of course the wheel is bigger, it's a 3x3, and then our 5x5, you might notice that the actual platform there is bigger. The actual suspension piece is bigger, and you can actually build on some of the sides of these. It's a bit weird that you can't build on that one, but you can build on this side and this side of these. Not too close to the top, mind you, but on this one, it's all 4 sides, I believe, yes. So it's pretty cool that you can build on the sides of these and basically use that to hide them in there or even have them connected from a side. But this one, as I was saying, does indeed have a larger placement area. So I'm going to go ahead and draw out a line here. Because I have the large wheel, you can see it rotates around the sort of corner point, which is pretty cool and pretty nice. Yeah, actually, I can place those in weird ways. But notice there, when I placed it, I got that error message saying wheel could not be placed. That shows up if you attempt to place one of these where there's not enough space for the wheel itself to show up above it, which is pretty cool that they have that sort of mechanic in there. So if you're like, oh, why is this not placing? It's probably because there isn't enough room here for it to generate the wheel, which you'd think there would be, but apparently there isn't. And also, it seems that you can place those in some strange ways, whereas, you know, usually you wouldn't be able to place as close to that wheel as I was able to place it there. So that's probably why that wasn't showing up. Anyway, let's delete that since I bumped it, since it does appear that landing gears are not saving their state between saves, or at least this is happening to me. Anyway, let's move on to the big ones. You can see they're pretty much the same exact thing. And once again, this one does have the 2x2 base there, which is much bigger than just the normal other ones. Let's go ahead and turn off mirroring too, shall we? Now, if I was to hop in this seat down here, some strange stuff is able to happen. So I can go into my inventory here, or my control panel, by pressing K, and you can see these suspension wheels, and they have their sizes marked and all this. Now, notice there are these two buttons here. There's steering and there's propulsion. We're going to go ahead and just shut each of these off right now, except for the big one. And now we just have this one set, so if I press W, it actually starts going. I press spacebar, it's like a handbrake, it stops it. I press S, it starts going the other way. It's pretty dang cool. And you can see I'm tapping it sort of like rev it up a little bit by bit, which is pretty dang awesome. And of course, if you just hold it, it goes all the way to its max speed right away. It's pretty awesome. And now if I was to get it going a little bit and press D and A, they actually rotate, which is pretty cool. Now, a strange thing I have noticed with this currently, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on all these now with propulsion and steering. And by the way, if you just have, with the small one, I'm just going to have steering on. So the little one way back there should just turn, but it's not. And you can see these are being they're changing in different directions because I'm at the control panel is at the middle point in between them. So they're sort of trying to counter and go around. It's a bit weird, not the best to show this, but if I was to actually go ahead and turn on propulsion on that little one and get it going, actually it doesn't seem to want to even respond at all. Notice that. The little tiny one on the left there isn't responding at all. What's going on? You're on, steering propulsion. Everything's on. It's not working. But that one was giving me issues earlier where it was like flying off that. So be warned. This is a small 1x1 suspension wheels seem to be having trouble. Oh, by the way, notice if you click on your cockpit now, in the control panel, there's control thrusters and control wheels. So if you have you want one person maybe to be controlling the wheels, theoretically you could have just one person doing that and one person using thrusters. Some interesting stuff going on. And handbrake means that they're pretty much permanently locked. So if I do W, well, you can see them shaking like crazy because they're not allowed to move, but of course I can turn handbrake off, and they move again. Pretty dang cool. And what else do we have here? Well, nothing else too much here, except for if you click on any of them, you'll notice this show on HUD thing. That's the very, third option between the name and everything else. You might be saying, well, what is it? Well, let me go ahead and turn it on. Nothing seems different. Well, that's because if on the same ship as that option you have an antenna placed down, now anything you have turned that option on will actually show up, and it'll actually show just little names. So if you want to have specific names of stuff showing up to help you coordinate maybe which wheel's which or whatever, as long as you have an antenna stuck on that same ship, station, or structure of any kind, you'll be able to see those names showing up, which is pretty dang cool. But of course we don't really want that, so we're going to go ahead and select all these and say, hey, get off of the HUD. There we go. And of course the antenna is still showing up, which now you can actually shut off antennas and they will stay off. And antennas also have infinite range on them, which is pretty cool. Anyway, let's move on to some more wheeled vehicles. If we come over here, you can see the absolute basic vehicle I have set up here. We're going to hop up into this, and it's pretty dang cool. And this one I actually have set up to the middle wheels. If I was get directly above, you can see that the middle wheels do not turn. And that is because I've gone ahead in here and I have the center wheels set to not have steering turned on, the steering thing here, but instead just have propulsion on. So they're the only ones actually propelling this whole six-wheeled vehicle. Whereas the other wheels that I have here, which I've just selected, none of them have propulsion on, just steering. So really it's a middle-wheel drive vehicle basically, but I like it a lot. I'm very, very happy with it. And the settings on these wheels, that's the only thing I've altered. So it's actually working pretty well with its absolute default settings. This is probably my favorite way to set these up because I started fiddling with them and some weird stuff got going on. You might be saying, okay, well, what are all those settings? Well, if I was to hop in this other vehicle, we'll start fiddling with those settings, shall we? And I'll actually make a copy of this just in case everything goes wrong. So let's hop in here. And there we go. And this one pretty much set up the same right away. Now, first off, you might notice it is a bit shakier. And by the way, it will keep going. So if, let's say, I get it up to speed and I don't press anything, it keeps going until you press handbrake or S to reverse it, but of course then you're going backwards. So let's just stop. And let's go ahead, pop open this, go down to, actually we'll select all the wheels. This is with a group that has just all the wheels, all 6 of them. And we're going to go ahead and up the strength. Now what the strength does, it's actually the strength of the suspension itself. So you might notice that we're not bobbling at all. Where if I was to lower the strength, let's actually stop. I'll go in spectator cam and bring our camera right over here super close to it. You see how much clearance there is under the vehicle? I've pressed F9, I've pressed K again to go back into the screen. Selected wheels, we're going to lower our strength and look at the left side of your screen there. Uh-oh, I've actually made us jump. Oh dear. But you can actually see that if I lower the strength, it lowers the amount of strength in the suspension, so the lower it is, the more give you got. So basically if I turn that all the way down, we'll have pretty much 0 strength. We're on the ground, which is pretty silly. But of course, if I up it too quick, you'll notice that jump that I had a second ago where, oh, they're at maximum strength, so it shot them up off the ground, which is pretty cool. I'm actually very, very happy with this thing overall. I'm really, really quite happy with it. Okay, what else do we have to show? Well, let's go back in there. Let's select all the wheels again. And friction, so that's, regulates wheel friction by changing pressure in the tire. That's the excuse for it, but basically it just changes the amount of friction. So if I up this all the way, you'd think, God, the car's going to go instantly. It's just going to start going forward, and yeah, it does. But let me go back into my view, and oh, this is pretty good, right? And ooh, wobble, 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 wobble. Why is that happening? Shouldn't it be near perfect? Well, no. The reason that's happening is, of course, because as the car attempts to turn, the back right, front right, and basically all the wheels except for the very center ones are, of course, sliding because they're being pushed at an angle away. So the front right wheel, if I was actually going into spectator mode, it's the best way to demonstrate this. You can see, watch the front right wheel. It doesn't just go into a very natural turn. It gets skidded slightly. And because it's skidding, the friction's so high on it, it's basically doing, like rubber across something. It's sort of giving a little bit by little bit. So it can be troublesome. And of course, if you get too much, you'll actually even flip your vehicle. So let's get out of this view and get back into our actual view here. So you can see here, it'll actually flip your vehicle if you're not careful. So you got to be cautious with that. Oh, I actually seem to be having some weirdness where it's not on the reverse. But that's, of course, because our friction is so high, it gets a bit strange and locks up. Now, of course, you might be saying it's going a bit slow. Well, we can, of course, get it going a bit faster if we go into the wheels. And actually, let's go ahead and just select the two back wheels, shall we? So I've selected the top one, held shift, selected the bottom one, and we'll turn propulsion on those as well. So now, you'll notice we're instantly moving a lot faster. It's pretty dang cool. Actually, I'm going to have F6 so I get camera right behind it or where I want it. And you can see now it goes a bit quicker. And of course, because our friction was so high, we've unfortunately flipped it and actually destroyed our cockpit. So that's a little bit unfortunate. So let's get another one of these in here and plop it right in there. Oh, by the way, something else I noticed. Notice that little pink dot when you're copying stuff. It's actually a 3D model of some sort, but it sort of sticks to objects now. We're not just placing it through an object, even though I'm flying out. If I use the scroll wheel, I can't even get it to go past that, which is very, very strange. So I'm no longer able to paste objects through things, which I don't know, personally that's very, very annoying. So hopefully that's just a glitch or something in the future. And now also, if you try to rotate something while you're aiming at it, while that little dot is actually hitting it, it does it in 45-degree angles, or 90-degree angles, pardon. So it's a bit strange, a bit different. Anyway, let's go ahead and paste another one of these in here. Whoa, there we go. And you see the suspension gives it a bit of bounce. It's actually pretty nice. I like it a lot. And you see the other vehicle there hit the other wall. It's bouncing back off a bit again. Let's get this here. Now let's see, what were our settings with that vehicle that we just lost? Oh, we've actually lost the grouping of all the wheels. So let's just make a new one for that really quick. Super simple. And for this, we want our strength up a bit. Friction, let's keep it down because the friction was actually what caused us to freak out there, I believe. Back wheels, let's turn the propulsion on again. And now you can see, even though we got the back wheels going, now instead of us flipping over because of the friction and us basically hitting the side wheels and whoop, flipping up, now you can see that we're basically skidding, we're drifting about a lot more. So you can tweak a lot of this stuff and you end up with very, very different control styles here. It's pretty cool, and I'm controlling all of this, by the way, with WASD. It's actually pretty dang awesome, and of course, space for handbrake. I'm liking it a lot, actually. You know my history of wheeled vehicles, you wouldn't expect that. So let's up the friction just a bit, and I think, yes, there we go, it's a bit better. A bit wobble there. If it starts wobbling like that, you know you've gone a bit too high on your friction, and you're about to flip yourself over, which is no good. So let's go ahead and drop our friction down again a little bit. How about right there? That seems to be pretty dang good. A bit of a flip when you stop, so got to be careful with that. Anyway, what else do we have in here on our wheel settings? Well, we have dampening, and I'm not exactly sure what dampening does. I think it might be sort of the softness of the impact when you come down or when you hit something. So let's go ahead, let's drop our friction about down to where it used to be. I think there's good. Let's drop our strength to, actually let's do this. Let's do a jump, shall we? So there's jump. Oh, that was a baby jump. Let's do another jump, shall we? Wheels all the way down and all the way up. So there's a good jump. I can't really tell. So I'm not exactly sure on dampening. I'm sorry, guys. I don't really know. I was hoping that there'd be a good tool tip over it, but it doesn't seem to show you very well what dampening actually does. I'm sure somebody in the comments will have figured it out and told me. If you do, And I'm pretty damn sure you're right. There'll be an annotation right here. Oh, look at that annotation. Check that out. If there's no annotation now, I just feel silly. Anyway, I think that's about it for these. You can, of course, if I was to fly over here and hop in this vehicle, stick weapons on it, and use said weapons as per usual. So if I have weapons on the front, now I have myself a car with guns on the front, which is actually pretty damn awesome. So let's just drive over here. Oh, I've hit a few things, of course, because I probably should have built these roadways a little bit bigger. And let's do this, and now I can begin engaging in a lot of stuff. And of course, if you find yourself in a sticky situation where, let's say, I had nearly run off one of the edges, I could, of course, go ahead and turn on all the wheels to have propulsion and get myself back over the edges, which is pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, I love these. I love the idea of having guns on the front. I think a lot of stuff is going to be happening in the future, and you see there I've killed enough power that it lost control and, of course, is now floating away from the gravity field we're in. It's pretty dang cool. I like it a lot. Now, of course, you could also, if you were so inclined, do some silly stuff, where you could take your front wheels. So let's go ahead and find front wheels, these two here. And we'll set their strength all the way up, and let's take our rear wheels and set their strength all the way down. And so now I'm technically aiming up a small bit. So you could imagine if you had some, depending on your setups, you could sort of rig stuff to act in different ways to allow you to aim up and down. And of course in the future when they get some sort of scripting in, I'm sure we'll see even more of this, which is pretty dang cool. Anyway, what else do we have? I think there's one last thing, and that is the fact that you cannot actually control these wheels through other things like rotors. So let's say I was to stick this big pylon here. Let's actually get in here and stop it really quickly. Thank you very much. And let's go ahead and stick a rotor on this now. And then let's go ahead and stick a wheel right over here. Now, oh, wheel cannot be placed because I was in the way of it. There we go. Wheel there. So now let's go ahead and press W. And you see all the other wheels are starting to spin, but not so much that new wheel, because unfortunately the commands are not transferring through that rotor into what is basically a separate ship. So hopefully in the future we will have the ability to actually have some sort of click button here, something to say be used by all, or be used by any control panel, not just the one on that specific ship. So a little unfortunate. Also, by the way, though, you can indeed build, let's just get rid of this, shall we? Boop. And hop, oh, come on. Oh dear Lord. And hop back in here. You can, of course, go ahead and build stuff onto these wheels, as I sort of hinted at earlier. But mind you, this is slightly dangerous. You can cause some trouble with yourself. Let's try to get, there we go. That's a bit silly. Now, of course, you can end up in some trouble, and just a singular one isn't so great. But I have noticed that sticking stuff onto these will sometimes cause an interesting issue where they seem to want to spurge out. So if I was to delete that from that wheel, we might end up with a huge glitch occurring. But really quickly, I'm just using two here to show you sort of an interesting little walk, which doesn't actually work so great because they barely have enough strength to spin themselves over. But yeah. Anyway, that's it for that. Last thing is, as I sort of hinted at over there, with the wheels being the different way, is this over here where I've stuck some wheels on this in strange ways. And well, actually, to demonstrate this, I'll go ahead and copy this and just bring it down here. And drop it off right there. Boing. And these wheels, of course, when I do W, the top wheels actually start spinning and stuff, which is pretty strange. And S, of course, they spin the other way. And when I try to turn, they try to figure out which way they would turn to help me out. So it's a bit strange. I'm sure people figure out interesting ways to make this all work. And a lot of it has to do with which side of the cockpit they're on. So if I was to go ahead and put a new cockpit on the far back here, we should end up with a slightly different situation where all of these wheels up front will now be turning, I think, the same way. Oh, why aren't we working? That would be why. I didn't have control wheels turned on, so I had to go in there. So now they still seem to be working pretty well the way they did before. So I don't fully understand it. It could be because it's going off of the center of mass. Let's get rid of the other cockpit to try to rule that out. No, it still seems to be trying to turn, so I think it's going off of the center of mass for which way the wheels should be turning. Anyway, it's pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff to still be fully figured out and fiddled around with. It's really quite interesting. I do wish there was a toggle option in the cockpit here, like another click button for instead of handbrake, there'd be handbrake and then tank mode, where it figures out left and right sides, so you could just basically do, when I press A, it would cause the wheels on my left to spin backwards, the wheels on my right to spin forwards, and maybe even still use the turning stuff, except for have them maybe reversed, or maybe you could toggle them. That way, I could have my wheels be like that on the right and like that on the left at the same time, and then spin in a circle. Maybe when you're at a dead stop and you turn, maybe they would understand that you're wanting to do a tank turn. I don't know, I just think there should be some options. I haven't fully thought them out, of course, but I think they're possible. Anyway, that's it, guys. This thing's starting to look like a Scorpion, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. Wheeled vehicles are working for me, so you know they've actually improved them a whole lot. But be warned, this is still work in progress in multiplayer, so yeah. Anyway, that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.